New England at Denver, a 10-7 game, missed field goals, blocked field goals, poor offensive days from both teams, and then the weather also got bad. So like the offense started off bad, and there wasn't really any way for them to like right the ship as the weather devolved and got worse as the game went on. And that leads to the Patriots winning 10-7. I mentioned it was a 10-7 game. They will advance to the Super Bowl. Not the most impressive of paths to the Super Bowl, or AFC Championship game to get to the Super Bowl. But regardless, you get there, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. Y'all's thoughts on this game?
You can kick it off, JP.
All right, cool. Well, I do want to start off by saying that I'm not of necessarily the opinion of Jack there that it is objectively true that the path was easy. In fact, the Patriots played the weakest strength of schedule from a record perspective of the teams they played this century.
Yeah.
And the weakest since the '99 Rams, who won the Super Bowl with Kurt Warner. But that being said, I'm not of the belief that they had necessarily a fully fraudulent run and that them making the Super Bowl isn't a tremendous accomplishment. For the game itself, it's a game that starts really, really slow. Both teams go 3 and out. And then we have the Jarrett Stidham deep ball over the top to Marvin Mims. It was something we talked about with the Buffalo and Denver game, that we thought that might be kind of a mismatch for Buffalo. Their young safeties versus Denver and Bo Nix and Marvin Mims. We didn't get really any of that.
Yeah.
We did technically get it, late in the game, but that was a little bit different because they're throwing the moon balls and they're really just looking for PIs in those circumstances or a catch. Bo Nix is never throwing a pick in that. This is a different, kind of play. Stidham throws, as Sanders was pointed out in our group chat from a tweet he saw, the longest pass through the air downfield by a Denver Bronco quarterback this season was made by Jarrett Stidham in this game, and his 52-yard completion to Mims on a 3rd and 10. Denver staring down the barrel of another 3 and out, 52-yard pass, and they're immediately inside, the 7-yard line. A full credit to Stidham. What a tremendous throw very early in the game. To make that kind of throw in the AFC Championship that is the first completion. Yeah, that's the first completion he had this season, is a 52-yard dime down the field. It's
That
the
is
first
crazy.
completion he's had in a regular season or postseason game in 3 years, and it's a 52-yard pass down the field. It sets up the touchdown 2 plays later where he boots it to the right and finds Cortland Sutton wide open. It's shocking, I think, in the moment for a lot of people because you think about, New England with the guys that they have. And Christian Gonzalez is the guy that gets beat on this play by Marvin Mims. And we think of him as one of the best corners in football, up there with Pat Surtain. And he gets beat early on. And Denver strikes. I could tell you, you could feel that energy in the building, and it immediately fully swung towards Denver, and it really felt like they had gained control of the game. The next 2 drives for New England are punts. Again, New England punts on their first 4 drives. But the critical drive of that first half is, of course, the 4th and 1 decision by Sean Payton and that offense. And look, there's been a lot of debate over that play these past 48 hours, give
Sure.
or take. Prior to the 4th and 1, the Pats, this is objectively true, statistically true, were 12 plays ran for 12 yards and 1 first down. This is objectively true. This Broncos were starting their backup quarterback, and I think one of my biggest feeling on this, and I don't think I've said it so far this postseason, but I'd like to go ahead and say it now. When you're playing in the postseason and you're playing in, any kind of one and done scenario, you, in football specifically for me, you think in scores and not points. Like, what can I do this drive to go up an additional score, not necessarily go up the most points possible? And so if Sean Payton decides to kick the field goal, which I was of the belief he should have kicked it prior to the snap, and Tony
Yeah.
Romo pointed that out prior to the snap as well. Like, you kick the field goal, you make it, you go up 2 scores, you're up 10 points. It forces New England to drive on your defense, which is the number 1 or number 2 defense in the league, and score twice, score 2 possessions. And it also allows you to have, some wiggle room where if Jarrett Stidham throws some kind of push pass that goes backwards and New England recovers it and all of a sudden they've scored a touchdown, you're still up a score. So I hate the decision by Sean Payton. I don't care. It's one of those things that's becoming a problem for a ton of head coaches right now in the league, especially a ton of offensive coaches that are big on ego and we trust our offense, we trust our play calls. I spent 72, 96 hours this week working on these plays and I trust these plays with my life. Well, you have to throw some of that out of the window. You need different opinions in different scenarios because you'll make decisions like you made in this game. Or Ben Johnson will make the decision he made last week where he goes for it twice and they turn over on downs and they leave points on the field. You think of, Detroit when they choked against the San Francisco 49ers in an NFC Championship game. It's dumb decisions in critical moments. It's very easy to say in hindsight that those decisions should have been made, but we've gotten too far in this league to where it's a 4th and 4 or less. It is an automatic go for it. And I know I made the point like in the game preview that, we as Madden players are all feel the same way, but it's different because legacies, careers, lives are changed on decisions like the decision that Sean Payton made. And to, on 4th and 1, roll out to the right to the boundary and force your quarterback to make a throw. I don't care how much you like the play call. It's also not a favorable play call in general.
Sure.
Have some kind of running the football option, maybe some kind of, with Jarrett Stidham's legs, some kind of quarterback power. I don't know. There's something else to go to the wide side of the field, keep yourself space. But I would have kicked the field goal regardless. One of the arguments I heard, though, in the past 48 hours over that play, and we can kind of continue to discuss this play. I'll swing it to y'all after
Yeah,
this.
I've got an argument, and I'm going to be really sad if you take my argument before I get to say it.
Go ahead, JP. What do you got?
My last one was I hate the weather stuff. I hate that argument that people made of, you should know that it was going to snow and the entire landscape of the game was going to entirely change. I looked at the forecast prior to the game. My brother and father were in attendance for this game. My brother's a Patriots fan. My dad, Patriots fan as well. They went to this game. They did not expect this. One of the texts I got from my dad in the fourth quarter was, the snow is horizontal. Like it's literally flying at a horizontal angle. It's not coming down from the earth. It's just blowing across the stadium. I looked at the forecast prior to the game. Jim Nantz in the pregame told us that if flurries were maybe expected in the fourth quarter. Tracy Wolfson tweets prior to the game, sunny skies. It looks like we're going to have a beautiful weather for the AFC Championship game. This was not expected. It's so hindsight by the people that were like, you should know that it's going to be a torrential snowstorm come the third and fourth quarter. That was on no one's radar. Flurries were expected. It was going to get cold. In fact, kickoff temperature was 32 degrees. It was 0 degrees Fahrenheit by 9 p.m. that night with the crazy, ice storm we had this week. But that weather stuff, regardless of that argument, which I hate, it should not matter in the decision there. Kick the field goal regardless. I don't care if it's 75 degrees and sunny. Kick the field goal. It was a clear statement that Sean Payton, trust my backup quarterback more than I trust my top tier defense, and that is such a flippin' shame. That's such a shame with the way they played this year. And you're at home.
I'm gonna go ahead and I don't want to say play devil's advocate because I feel like devil's advocate is usually on the side of objectively wrong. I think he was right. That's not even devil's advocate. I like the decision to go for it. I heard an argument for it that I really, really like. It was Sean Payton being aggressive as an underdog. knowing that they may not find themselves in the position, which, by the way, they didn't, all right? They go down, they go for it because they think they are going to need a touchdown because they don't think they're going to be able to hold the Patriots to less than 14 points. Now, they don't know the snow's going to come and it's going to slow the all offenses to a halt. But I do think that Sean Payton is smart enough to know the Patriots defense is going to make adjustments and the Patriots offense is also going to make adjustments. And that, the Broncos can also try and do that. But if you look at it, after that fourth down, the Broncos had 8 drives and totaled 56 yards. And I think that Sean Payton, they were underdogs in that matchup. You kind of have to take advantage of all the opportunities. You can't settle for field goals when you're the underdog. You can't settle for field goals with a backup quarterback because you may not be able to get in field goal range again. They got close to field goal range once and attempted the field goal, and it didn't go through. It got tipped. But I don't hate the aggressiveness of recognizing you're kind of playing with house money with a backup quarterback when you're in this situation when I think it was 4th and 1. That was a reasonable distance to go for it, especially given the current analytics of going for it in certain situations. That was a very reasonable situation to go for it, in my opinion. And I don't hate the aggressiveness when you've got that backup quarterback, and you kind of expect the defense who hasn't seen, right? There's not a lot of tape out there on who is the quarterback?
Jarrett Stidham.
Thank you, Jarrett Stidham. Anyway, there's not a lot of tape out there on Jarrett Stidham for teams to prep for, to game plan for, to plan around. And so the more they see him, the more they get used to his tendencies, the more you kind of expect, all right, maybe that 50-plus yard pass to Marvin Mims won't be there. Maybe they start to get, jump more passes. Maybe they intercept something. So that's kind of why I don't hate it, because you're being aggressive in a game where you're the underdog. If you go up 2 scores, if you go up 14-0, the field goal would have put you up 2 scores, but to go up 14-0, against a team that you are expected to lose to give your quarterback, the backup quarterback that you're having to trot out there every drive, to give him that confidence to kind of try to go and finish the game, I don't hate that. So that's what I'll say. And I think that the hindsight looking back also, I think it works in Denver's favor because, like I said, 8 plays or 8 drives, 56 yards. They got back into New England territory twice in those 8 drives.
But it also hindsight, if you're going to the Broncos held the Patriots to 10 points, and if you just take the field goal, it's
you
a
go
tie
to
game,
overtime, and
that's a whole lot better than losing. The defense did their job. I also just don't feel like Sean Payton felt like the underdog necessarily in this game. I agree completely with JP that and I'm one of the most aggressive go for it guys out there. I feel like I'm constantly on this show. Even when Ohio State kicked the field goal into Indiana, I was like, why in the world would you do that? And they missed it and lost, which. I still wouldn't. That's an aside. But you're here because of your defense, realistically, and your defense was kind of always going to have to win you this game. And so, just take the 2-possession lead, and then basically say, "Hey, defense, it's on y'all now." Because you're right. The Broncos were never going to march up and down the field on the Patriots. But weather aside, because like JP said, we had no idea what the weather was going to be like in that 3rd, 4th quarter. The Patriots hadn't moved the ball yet, and your defense had played super well, and it's not even like the Patriots' offense has been hot all this playoff run at all.
Yeah.
So I think there's a reasonable feeling of I think we can, in the Broncos building, I think we can really stall out this Patriots offense for the whole game. I think we can really limit their offense for the whole game because they, like I said, they just really have not been fantastic this whole playoff run.
Yeah.
I personally would have kicked. I don't think it's some egregious how dare you go for that type beat. But I'm just taking the 2-possession lead, and like JP said, you kind of feel like you trusted the backup quarterback over your defense. That's been a top 5 defense in the league.
Yeah, but you say a 10-all tie in overtime would have been better, but the Broncos, like I said, the Broncos offense got 56 yards over the next 2.5 quarters, the next almost 3 quarters.
You could make the same argument for New England. New England had 2 drives the entire game that went longer than 25 yards.
The New England scoring drive was a 12-yard touchdown drive.
Yeah, and then they had the 64-yard drive in the 3rd quarter. I just I think that you should take advantage. And then if we look back and the Broncos end up losing because once the snow starts, their offense can't function, and the Patriots couldn't either. But maybe we look back and say, wow, I wish they'd been more aggressive when they had that opportunity on a 4th and 1.
I can't say I wouldn't react different, but I'm not making this decision to kick it based on hindsight.
Yeah.
Based on what we knew going into the game of who the two teams were, what you were up against. I love the 2-possession lead there because, I mean, honestly, if they do go to overtime and they lose, I'm looking at the 2 missed field goals Denver had. One was blocked.
Yeah.
And going, man, if you could have just hit one of those, then you win the game 13-10. I mean, I'm still kind of sitting here like, man, if JP mentioned, in our chat that the kicker lined it up 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage instead of 8 or whatever it was on his last kick because the snow was so bad. So like, if you could have just not done that, which that's makes it sound so simple. It's snowing horizontally. Apparently, how you're supposed to know what 7 yards and 8 yard difference is, right?
Well, they superimpose the lines on the field for that reason. So just look at the superimposed lines.
Yeah, go look up. I don't know if it was on the big board, but to make sure we get that story right, Will Lutz, the kicker, was asked after the game, and he wasn't asked specifically about it. He brought it up himself. He admitted to it, and that they had snapped it 7 yards from the line of scrimmage instead of the typical 8, and that was the difference between it, hitting the fingertip of a New England player, and that's
who said I got all ball.
Leonard Taylor, the guy with the block, he was on the Jets practice squad just months ago. So again, it speaks to this great sport of football where it can be your moment at any moment. And Leonard Taylor ends up with the big block there because of Lutz and their mistake. I understand where you're coming from, Sanders, but I think what it kind of boils down for me is what I said finally, which was it was a clear statement that I trust me being Sean Payton, my play calling and my backup quarterback more than I trust my top 1 defense that set the franchise record in sacks and had 5 sacks in this game. And it held New England to only 2 drives that went 25 yards or longer. I do think that is it's such a shame to make that kind of decision as the head coach. And I'd be pissed if I'm the Denver defense. So, a lot of people on the Denver defense felt that way. Nick Benito, if I'm not mistaken, it may have been someone else, used the age-old cliche saying of, oh, we were obviously the better team. We were better than them, and yet they lost. And, he has every right to feel that way because the defense showed up and they played a great game. But I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I feel with Jack as well. I'm a very aggressive play caller when I play the video game. Who isn't? I'll go for it on 4th and 17 sometimes if I liked the look I had on 3rd and 17.
Completely agree.
So it can be a little hypocritical, but when it is the playoffs, I do think it comes down to think in scores and not in points. What can I do to force the opposing team to have to go score an additional time?
Yeah.
Whether that's a touchdown or a field goal, it doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll just say is in response to that, in my opinion, I think there's a reasonable chance that it was more of Sean Payton, thinking in terms of this is a Patriots team that just scored 28 points on the Texans defense. And we said all season long that the Broncos defense is really good, but the Texans defense is incredible, is great, is better than the Broncos defense. And, you can argue home field versus away. I think that's just kind of comes down to, as I think Sean Payton thought he was going to need touchdowns. And I think that he knew that with a backup quarterback, he's only going to have so many opportunities to get touchdowns.
Sure.
So that's kind of how I view it. But I do think, I think and I don't think it really matters. I think that we can argue about it, but it was a 50-50. I think it was a call that there's going to, everyone who is going to argue about it, neither of us is right or wrong about it's not one of those objectively just stupid calls, in my opinion.
They didn't go for it on 4th and 8 in that spot.
Yeah, they didn't get super aggressive or a fake punt, I showed somebody the Indianapolis Colts fake punt from the late 2010s.
Not one of those.
It was not one of those egregious mistakes. So I think that's kind of it's interesting, and we'll talk about it going forward, and we'll see how. Sean Payton is an aggressive coach, so we'll see if that changes anything. I doubt it. He's probably set in his ways, but it made for entertainment for sure. It made for some cinema down the stretch. especially in that snow.
Yeah, to flip it to the New England side, and to talk about them, because that is, I think, where the bigger story lies. Drake May becomes the first quarterback in NFL history to throw for under 100 yards in the AFC Championship game and win. The biggest story for me is, Drake May, led the league in getting sacked this season after the 2 playoff games. He's sacked 5 times in this game, but here's the big difference. He had the most fumbles and interceptions in a 2-game playoff win streak in NFL history the last 2 weeks. 0 turnovers on Sunday. Does not put the ball in harm's way really at any crucial point in this game. Only completes 10 passes. And then the 3rd down conversion at the end of the game, he calls his own number. I don't know if you guys heard this story.
I did see that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw that.
He calls his own number. They were running a stretch play to the right, and Drake debated whether or not in the huddle to tell his team whether or not he was going to keep it. He decides not to, and I think it plays to his team's benefit as they really think they're running it to the right, and it really sells it to the defense. And he runs on the bootleg to the left and gets to the first down. And the first thing I texted following that play, I texted to a lot of people, but I texted legendary players make legendary plays, and that is a play that will live in Drake May's career for a long time. That play, and I think the flea flicker play, those 2 plays were absolutely ridiculous, especially with the snow coming down in the second half.
Sure.
Ramondre Stevenson pitches it back to Drake, and Drake throws it on a line to Mac Hollins for a 31-yard gain. It was the only pass May completed longer than 10 yards down the field in the game, and it was an absolutely critical one. I thought it was for Drake to know that we're playing a backup quarterback with the way our defense is playing, and then when you got the snow falling, it was very, very clear we are just trying to get that clock to hit, triple zeros. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way. He makes his play when he needs to. A great game from Drake May. And we can kind of, it's now going to be a big talking point over the next 2 weeks in this off season and next season and forever. But Drake May is, the first quarterback, of that elite group of AFC quarterbacks, not Mahomes and not Joe Burrow, to make the Super Bowl. And, Josh Allen hasn't done it. Lamar hasn't done it. And he is now going to be kind of the staple on that. Will he solidify himself in some allure with the entire NFL? He's also the first out of that great draft class that we talked about earlier in this show with Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. Bo, of course, didn't get to play in this game, but he is going to the Super Bowl. He's going to get a chance to play as an underdog in his second year as a starter. And I can't wait to see how that goes. Mike Vrabel and Drake May, what a combination they've been. Drake May, they told this story at the end of the broadcast. Jim Nantz did, and this will be a story we'll probably hear over the next 2 weeks. Drake May has only attended 1 Super Bowl in his life. Not a lot of people get to attend it because it's so damn pricey to go to the Super Bowl. He attended 1 Super Bowl in his entire life. He grew up in Charlotte, and he was a Carolina Panthers fan, and he went to Super Bowl 50 with his father as Panthers fans. They drove from Charlotte all the way to San Francisco, and he was just 13.
Wow.
Now he'll play in the same building, San Francisco, Santa Clara, Levi Stadium, at age 23. He'll be the second youngest quarterback to start in a Super Bowl ever. Only one who was younger was Dan Marino, who also made it in year 2, who also played the Super Bowl literally like 5 minutes from the stadium, Levi Stadium, at Stanford Stadium. Marino also lost to an NFC West team, the San Francisco 49ers. And had Matthew Stafford and the Rams won, this would have gotten even better because the 49ers quarterback that year was Joe Montana, and Joe Montana had just won his second Super Bowl over Dan Marino that year, and that could have been the same story for Matthew Stafford, which
Sure.
that would have been crazy how history repeats itself. But instead, it's May versus the Seahawks, a little Super Bowl 49 rematch. Malcolm Butler, that'll be played many times this week. Richard Sherman's reaction to that, all of that. One of the, like I said, my brother and my father were Patriots fans, so that is a great day in our household. But
I bet.
y'all's thoughts on Drake May? What this going to do for his career? Obviously, he has not been good over these 3 games. In fact, like you can compare his 3 playoff games to that of Trent Dilfer in 2001 when he was the backup quarterback for Baltimore and that defense carried them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, you wouldn't expect him to have a great game against Seattle's defense, but who knows? Stafford cooked him 3 times, so it's up in the air. But y'all's thoughts on Drake May, what this does for his career and, his play so far in the playoffs?
I'll just start with I've been very disappointed in his play these playoffs. I'm a guy that's very high on Drake May, and he had a phenomenal regular season. Playoffs is a different animal, but I still expected more than this. But it still is like a huge benchmark for his career and a huge early achievement. I mean, you just talked about he's the second youngest quarterback ever to do so. I don't really care how you get there. It's huge, and rightfully so. You even mentioned all those other second-year quarterbacks that's shaping up to potentially be a fantastic quarterback class. He has that over all of them. And all the Drake May stands on Twitter, Instagram, where, your Drake May stands in real life or just Patriots fans can use that as kind of like a trump card over any of those other guys. And it's fair. It's a legitimately fair trump card because he's gone further than anyone else. I mean, I just sat here last week and said, I hope Caleb Williams doesn't win because I like having the trump card of Jaden Daniels has played in an NFC championship game and Caleb Williams hasn't. And I why then would I turn around and be like, that's not big that Drake May has something that none of those other guys have. It's not the end-all, be-all, but especially this early in the career, there's only so much to go on. It does mean a lot, so shout out to him for that. Hopefully he plays better than the Super Bowl. I think they'll need him to play better in the Super Bowl. Obviously, we're not previewing the game, but they'll need a little more from him, I think, than he's shown these past couple weeks. But he does kind of seem like a guy that's going to rise to the challenge, talking about the naked bootleg on 3rd down, hitting the flea flicker. He just might have a knack for kind of those big moments, so we'll see.
Cool.
One more?
Yeah.
3 more stats. This is on the New England Patriots. They are the first team in NFL history to do these 3 things, which is why I do think the argument with I get it for the regular season with their strength of schedule, but for the postseason, I don't necessarily agree. They are the first team in NFL history to beat 3 top 5 total defenses en route to a Super Bowl. So before the Super Bowl game, they beat the number 5 total defense, the Chargers, number 1 Texans, and number 2 Broncos. If they beat Seattle, who's number 3, they will be the only team to ever beat 4 en route to a Super Bowl victory. There have been 2 teams that have beaten 3 top defenses. One of John Elway's years winning the Super Bowl with the Broncos, and one of Troy Aikman's years winning the Super Bowl with the Cowboys. But both of those teams were first round bye number 1 seeds and played all of those games at home.
Yeah.
And only played 3 of them. So they're the first team to do that, and they'll have the chance. They'll be the only one to ever beat 4. They're also the first team in NFL history to go 9-0 on the road in a single season, and I don't care who you play.
Very impressive.
Because that is a tremendous, tremendous accomplishment, especially with such a young team and a young quarterback. And they're also the first team in NFL history to make the Super Bowl in 5 consecutive decades. They've made it in the 80s, 90s, the zeros, 2000s, the 2010s, and the 2020s.
You said they were the first team to go 9-0 on the road. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, I want to add a little bit of context. We've only had that as a possibility for a few years with the 17-game schedule. Not to take away from it It's just I imagine we've had teams go 8-0 on the road. I don't know if you looked into that.
They were 8-0 in the regular season. They only played 8 road games, and then they won this one in the playoffs. They
Okay,
go
okay.
9-0.
Okay, cool.
So there have been teams that potentially could have won 8 and then won one on the road in the postseason. I didn't get enough research on that because that is an interesting question of how many teams have had the opportunity to win the 9th game
Yeah,
on the road.
because
But even still, like to go 8-0 on the road and then go win one in the playoffs, it's a great accomplishment.
yeah, I'm sure it would be difficult to have that because if you go 8-0 on the road, it means you're a pretty dang good football team, and if you're good, you're going to host in the playoffs.